from the spurs, feathers arranged and tied together to form cloaks and blankets. A fruitful source of information about the food habits of the Indians, as well as the early settlers, are frequently obtained from shell heaps or kitchen middens. These are huge piles of shells, bones, and other remnants from feasts. One of these would usually be associated with an Indian village. The Globe Hill shell heap in Hancock County, dated some 3,000 to 7,000 years ago, was found to contain many fragments of turkey bone, along with remains of deer, soft-shelled turtle, and box turtle. Among the larger game favored by the frontiersmen were the elk or wapita, the woodland caribou, and the white-tailed deer. The elk must have ranged throughout much of Appalachia if the number of localities such as Elk Mountains, Elk Rivers, Elk Licks, and Elk Garden are any indication of its abundance. As late as the 1820s, elk were abundant in western Pennsylvania. The last one recorded in West Virginia was killed in Pocahontas County in 1867. The white-tailed deer was abundant throughout the state until the early 1900s. It reached its lowest numbers about 1910, when under more rigid protection and management it began to stage a comeback. Mountain hunters, to whom venison once may have meant life or death, knew that deer were far from abundant in heavy woodlands. In this instance, a knowledge of the deer's habits paid off. The hunter knew that sooner or later the deer would have to visit a salt lick, for salt is a necessity in the diet of a cud-chewing animal. The location of a salt lick was a carefully treasured secret. In many of the valleys of the tributaries of the Ohio River, salt licks were common. If the salt licks were absent, the settler had to provide one by boring large holes in logs and filling them with salt. It is easy to understand why the hunter preferred the deer or elk, and even the turkey, to the smaller game which must have been present in the woodlands. One deer could provide food for a family for some time. The meat could be cut into strips and smoked and dried to form a jerky which was palatable. Meat could also be salted for preservation, since ice and refrigeration was a luxury, far removed from the early log cabin. However, there were times when the smaller amounts of the forest were shot for food. The rough grouse and the gray squirrel were considered delicacies by the early hunter, much as they are today. The muskrat and the beaver, particularly the tail, were eaten. Rabbits, as well as the varying hare or snowshoe rabbit, provided the protein supplement during the long cold winters. Aquatic life, such as fish, mussels, and turtles, were also eaten. Many other forms of animal life were eaten, especially when the more desirable ones were scarce. Ducks, geese, doves, and other birds were hunted. Surrounded by this abundance and variety of game, it would seem difficult, if not impossible, for a pioneer family to suffer for lack of food. But many of them did, time and time again. During severe winters, famine could stalk the settlements, and death and disease was a constant threat. A resourceful hunter could usually provide his family with game, but many of the early settlers were unfamiliar with the habits of the wild creatures, or they were poor shots. The wilderness life was truly a survival of the strong, the cunning, and the resourceful. Tigers and other fearsome beasties. There were many times when the life of the early settler was anything but pleasant. Many problems plagued him, and even the strongest of heart became discouraged at times. Lonesomeness, sickness, fire, famine, and Indians were a constant threat to the Appalachian pioneer. There were also several animals which were native to the mountains that brought a constant threat to one's safety. Among those were the cougar or panther, the eastern timber wolf, the black bear, and the snakes. The mountain lion is the largest member of the cat family in eastern North America. When William Bartram, a famous American naturalist, explored the southeastern states in the late 1700s, he wrote of tigers that roamed the mountain. This big cat was referred to locally as puma, cougar, or panther, but the hill folk in the mountains of West Virginia know them only as painters. It is a tawny, unspotted cat with a long tail. They may attain a total length of close to 8 feet. It is a predator which originally fed on deer, elk, and bison. As the white man began to settle the Appalachians, the panther preyed upon his livestock. Mountain people feared the animal for many reasons. It was capable of making tremendous leaps, and it had great power in its paws and jaws. It was elusive and swift. Many stories relate to panthers following a solitary hunter to his home in the dusk, while the terrified hunter expected to be attacked at any moment. Its scream has terrified many frontiersmen, and its voice has been variously described as that of the whimpering of a child and the cry of a woman in distress. And although the stories of panthers attacking humans are greatly exaggerated, there are a few authentic accounts of people being killed by panthers. The most puzzling stories associated with the panther are the frequent accounts of sightings of these secretive creatures in Appalachia today. The last recorded kill of a panther in West Virginia was one on Tea Creek in Pocahontas County in 1887. Yet one can be sure that as soon as he mentions the last recorded kill in the state, someone in the audience will come up with a recent sighting. As late as 1736, panther tracks were spotted on Kennison Mountain in Pocahontas County by 2 mammalogists from the United States National Museum. Second only to the mountain lion, the eastern timber wolf was probably the most feared animal in the Appalachians. The timber wolf is a large, broad-headed wild dog. The males may attain a total length of almost 6 feet and weigh as much as 150 pounds. Under certain conditions, the wolf could instill great fear in the hunter than the panther. Their habit of traveling in packs and their fearlessness in attacking when hungry made them very dangerous. The wolf population began to decline in Appalachia in the late 1800s. Such measures as bounties, hunting, poisoning, and traps proved ineffective. The most important factor in their decline was the settlement of the country with its attendant harassment. The last recorded kill of a wolf in West Virginia was in Randolph County in 1905. Today, reports of the appearance of wolves in the east prove under investigation to be coyotes or police dogs. The Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of Appalachia is the black bear. Unlike the wolf and the mountain lion, the black bear has been able to hold its own throughout most of its range in the east. While it seems to prefer the remote forested wilderness for its habitat in the mountains, there are many instances, such as in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, where they seem to be adapted to civilization. While hunting seasons on the black bear are established in most of the eastern states with bear range, there are occasions when the black marauder intrudes upon a flock of sheep and the local farmers demands its demise. Full-grown specimens may attain a weight of 500 to 600 pounds, although the average lies between 200 and 300 pounds. They may stand over 5 feet high. Although they are classed as carnivorous, Their diet is almost omnivorous. They eat a variety of animal food, including small game, snakes, and fish, while their plant food covers blackberries, acorns, roots, and fruits of many forest plants. The black bear is considered awkward, clumsy, and comical by many, but there are times when they can be dangerous. He is an extremely fast and agile animal and extremely adept at a lunge. When they emerge from hibernation in the spring, they are lean and hungry and ill-tempered. When a sow bear is with cubs, she is to be avoided. Many hikers and campers, as well as tourists, have been mauled or clawed by the black bear when it was cornered or tempted with food which was withheld. The early settlers hunted the bear for its meat, as well as its oil or fat, which not only was supposed to have a therapeutic value, but was used in greasing patches to be used in the rifle. Furthermore, the fur or hide was made into coats or rugs. Many hides were shipped to England, where they were made into shakos, the tall black fur hats worn by the palace guards in London. Woven into this folklore of the early Appalachian settlers were the numerous stories about snakes. Migrating mostly from Ireland, where snakes were non-existent, or from the mother country of England, where they were uncommon, it was a traumatic experience to encounter a deadly viper with a buzzer on its tail. Rattlesnakes are a New World creation, and the tales the early colonists carried back to the old country or wrote to their friends or relatives were wondrous indeed. Man has always held the serpent in fear and awe ever since it was selected to be the symbol of man's first temptation. The early colonists selected the rattlesnake as their emblem and incorporated it in several of their flags with the motto, "Don't tread on me." Bradford's Journal of December 27, 1775 defends this selection in the following passage. I recollected that her eye exceeded in brilliance that of any other animal, and that she has no eyelids. She may therefore be esteemed an emblem of vigilance. She never begins an attack, nor when once engaged ever surrenders. She is therefore an emblem of magnanimity. Hello, young man. How you doing, buddy? And true courage, as if anxious to prevent all pretensions of quarreling with the weapons with which nature provided or favored. She conceals them in the roof of her mouth, so that to those who are unacquainted with her, she appears most defenseless. And even when those weapons are shown and extended for defense, they appear weak and contemptible, but their wounds, however small, are decisive and fatal. Conscious of this, she never wounds until she has generously given notice, even to her enemy, and cautioned her against the danger of treading on her. Was I wrong, sirs, in thinking this a strong picture of the temper and conduct of America?